This doctrine of determinism teaches us to hate no one, to despise no one, to mock no one, to be angry with no one, and to envy no one. And I should say that Darwin and Einstein and many other philosophical and scientific luminaries have also said the same thing. There's a page at naturalism.org called The Argument from Celebrity. And I know everyone must believe what Einstein says, right? And Darwin, and Dennett, and Dawkins, and Harris, and Clark, and Spinoza, and Buddha, they all denied libertarian free will. So should you. As I was saying, this has strong affinities with Buddhism. The Buddha knew this. The insight of dependent arising, dependent origination. There's no substantial self in here. We are all equally caused beings. This is part of getting from empiricism to equality. We're all equally caused. There are no superior selves out there who made themselves, or souls. We're equally connected to nature, no matter who you are. The president to the humblest street sweeper. Okay. What does this do? We become more compassionate in our attitudes and in the way we hold each other responsible. Our responsibility practices these days tend to be on the punitive side. I think you'll see if you look at the criminal justice system. So things do change when we take this point of view, the naturalistic view of ourselves, in terms of how we hold each other responsible. We'll do so more compassionately, and I believe more effectively. Now, getting back to politics. There are political differences on free will. Conservatives, more than liberals, believe that human beings can transcend causation and bootstrap themselves into success or fail to do so. And Rand and the objectivists believe in free will. They say as much. Ronald Reagan said the homeless choose to be homeless. Governor George Pataki said the root cause of crime, get this, is criminals. Nice story. Libertarians are, as the term libertarian free will suggests, are more likely, I think, to believe in a kind of strong countercausal freedom. I don't have survey evidence to prove it, though. But we are doing research on free will these days, so we might get some of that soon. Conservatives use countercausal free will to assign ultimate blame and withhold assistance. If you don't succeed, it's all your fault. You could have tried harder, and your circumstances do not explain your choice not to. Don't pass the buck. Don't look at your poverty. Don't look at the meetings you got. That's all excuses, right? Say the conservatives. Tough it out. Well, to some extent, that's good advice. We don't want to be crybabies, but in reality, every part of this does come from our past, our circumstances, genetic and environmental. The conservatives are wrong, and they will use the method of countercausal free will to pin the blame on the victim, the homeless, the poverty-stricken. They could have gotten ahead but chose not to, and it's their fault. Don't come crying to government. You could have done it. Why didn't you? See, he did it. So why didn't you? Answer that question. Why didn't you? It would be led to causation, and that would explain why. Progressives and liberals are much more likely to accept the role of luck in causation. Governor Mario Cuomo, commenting on how he got to be governor of New York from very humble beginnings, said, "It was luck, all luck and nothing else." And he was right. So the egalitarian implications of naturalism come out of this, and that we're all equally caused. But there's another thread here, which doesn't have to do with free will. We're going to shift gears very quickly. This is it. Naturalism, based in science, offers no support to traditional, often faith-based and unscientific prejudices against classes of people like women, minorities, gays, atheists, liberals. What does religion do? It often singles out classes of people, for instance, non-believers, as second-class citizens. Science doesn't do that. There are no science-based grounds for special rights or privileges for any particular group, for instance, white males. Right? From a naturalistic perspective, human beings are all equally deserving of the same basic human rights. There's no grounds for discrimination to be found in science. So, it is no coincidence that we're liberals here. that scientific naturalists tend to be progressive humanistic liberals in their policies and personal lives. Because if you stick with the evidence, there's no good evidence to support the claim that we should discriminate on the basis of any particular human characteristic. This is a central point about ethics that I think secularists could make something of. I haven't heard it said too often. So, empiricism tends towards equality. Universal human rights is an achievement of a scientific enlightenment. By the way, I'm not saying naturalism and science are the key to ethics or enlightenment or humanity or humanism or any good thing. There are many routes to being a good, upstanding, fine human being and citizen. So I don't want to claim too much. I'm not saying that naturalism is the only way to get there. By no means. But I am saying that there's no coincidence that if you're science-based, you're going to end up in a progressive direction. And it's the progress in human rights that is attributable to liberals and progressives. The progress that we now take for granted, achieved over the last 200 years, is precisely because of people like us, not the conservatives. It's just a simple historical fact. Conservatives have been on the wrong side of history when it comes to human rights all the way down the line. This leads to progressive social policy. Criminal justice reform. Retribution is untenable since offenders don't ultimately deserve to suffer, so we should use the least punitive means to protect, deter, and rehabilitate. Criminal justice institution is with us because people will misbehave, but we don't have to be retributive. There's no justification for retribution per se when you get rid of contra-causal treatment. If you see that someone is determined in their behavior through and through, you'll be less likely to inflict unnecessary suffering. Here's Sam Harris. The urge for retribution seems to depend on our not seeing the underlying causes of human behavior. That's in the section on free will. He's absolutely right, and I was delighted to see it there, because this is a message the Center for Naturalism is promoting for the last 10 years, and it's lovely to see Sam Harris come out and say this. Reducing economic inequality, as I've suggested, there's no naturalistic justification for supposing the poor deserve their poverty or the rich deserve their riches. The lucky, like us, should help the unlucky through taxes, progressive taxes, and social programs. Tax rates back when Reagan was president would be nice, which are about double what they are now. So I'm not suggesting anything too radical. Just go back 3 years and look at what the highest tax rates were. Addiction, mental illness, and obesity, these are behavioral health problems that if you take a naturalistic, science-based view of ourselves, you cannot feel contempt and disdain with the addict as the way you used to before. You could have been them, but for circumstances. You might become one. May not yet. So, no contempt necessary if you take a causal view. Naturalism and personal liberties. I'm going to reach sometimes the questions, so I'm going to jump through this. Abortion, there's no science-based naturalism provides no evidence for ensoulment and conception. I think we'll talk about this. So there's no overriding right to life of the fetus that trumps the interests of women. That gives liberty to women. The right to die. This applies to all of us. There's no naturalistic justification for limiting the right to choose a good death that I know of. There are many religious justifications, but no naturalistic justification. No, there's no obligation to live and suffer until the bitter end. I want to die a good, deliberate death. Gay rights. There's no naturalistic justification for denying equal rights, including marriage. I'm proud to say 10 years ago I wrote a letter to the Boston Globe advocating for gay marriage, and they printed it 10 years on, just after gay marriage was legalized. It was very satisfying. Effective social policy. Control. This is the control part of naturalism. How can we best solve our problems? Well, we have to accept and understand science and causation. It gives us power and control, right? How does crime arise? What causes addiction, obesity, lack of motivation, social inequality, climate change? What causes what? Especially when it comes to our own behavior. And here's the key. Suppose that something about us transcends causation, is disempowering. Why? Because it prevents understanding the actual causes of our behavior. To believe in free will is to disempower yourself. You'll think that you could just do something. You can't just do something. Your behavior arises out of circumstances. That's power to know that. We become more intentional in our social policy. Behavioral technology, behavior tech, applying what we know about ourselves in service of progressive goals, for instance, achieving a less violent culture, economic equality, population control, climate control, sustainability. We have to know how things work. We have to know how we work. We can design optimum environments for personal and social flourishing. We should be interested in prevention, not punishment, when it comes to crime. And we can do that, but we have to get intentional about it. Very few people are talking about behavioral technology because they're worried about social control. I'm suggesting that we have to get serious about intentional social control. Grab it intentionally. Get it out in the open. This is what I'm trying to do right now. We can create political will because political will comes out of circumstances. This is a positive feedback loop of collective self-control. It's not easy, but we can, as Elgort would like to believe, and I think we can do it. We can foster, and this is an important point, personal autonomy by educating people about their susceptibility to marketing and manipulation. And we can learn, as B. S. Skinner said many years ago, how to exert counter-control over the marketers and manipulators. I could be such a manipulator. Be careful. Are you being manipulated right now? Am I trying to manipulate you? I'm telling you about manipulation. Am I manipulating you in that sense? If you think so, good, because now you're starting to exert counter-control. I like skepticism. But don't suppose you can evade causation or control by your little nugget of free will in there. It doesn't exist. Here's some personal and interpersonal applications of naturalism. We're getting down to the end. Self-compassion. Here we are. Me, little poor me. Discarding contra-causal free will alleviates unnecessary and excessive self-blame, guilt, and shame. Talk about shame and guilt. The last talk? Whoa. Those poor people. Well, poor us too. We're all burdened with shame and guilt, perhaps more than we should be, if we understand where we come from and accept it. It doesn't mean that we escape responsibilities, I hope I showed, but it does mean that we can let ourselves off the hook, at least to some extent. Not kick ourselves in the butt quite so hard. And self-control. Understanding your behavior permits effective control of your situation to bring about your desired changes. It gives you power. This applies to other people too. Understanding and accepting that there are fully causes to improve interpersonal relationships, your spouse, your husband, your girlfriend, your boyfriend. Empathy and compassion for others. There, but for circumstances go I. It's the same thing there, but how does it work in religious context? There, but for the grace of God go I. Right. It's the naturalistic equivalent, right? And it should have the same effect. It means you don't demonize and you don't adulate. You don't be like Donald Trump. What a... I'm sorry, I started to demonize. Okay. Continue on this. We can diffuse anger and gain knowledge by answering the rhetorical question, why the hell does he keep doing that fool? That's a rhetorical question. Answer it. Why does he keep doing that fool? That idiot, my husband, who keeps forgetting to take the key to the door, whatever. What have I done recently? Yeah. Okay. Ask and answer the question of why. Why do idiots behave idiotically, including yourself? If you look into the question, you'll gain power and forbearance, compassion.